When I mentioned the intestinal stem cells, it got me thinking about something else in your book I hadn't heard anybody else talk about, and that's the mobility of the microbiome that changes when we fast. So I'd love for you to talk about what happens there and why that's important.
Yeah, you got all the juicy parts of the book. I love it. There's something called geographical relocation that happens in the body where all of our microbes start to clump together in our intestinal tract. And when they're clumped together, what will happen is that they're not able to absorb our nutrients as much. And I learned this from Emran Mayer. I don't know if you've had him on your podcast. He wrote a book called Gut Immune Connection. And have you had him on your podcast?
I'm aware of him. He's on the list to look into trying to get on the show, but not yet.
Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion about how when we take these microbes in the gut and we get them out of these clumps, we start to get them so that they can start to spread out more, we actually are going to absorb our nutrients from our foods better. So like if you're struggling to get more B vitamins, you're struggling to get, some of the minerals like magnesium, you're trying to pull this out of your food, you need those microbes to not be clumped together. So fasting helps them unclump and become more separate so that nutrient absorption can happen. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say that happens in the gut is any bad bacteria, the longer you fast, will die off. So this is where you start to see people who get diarrhea and constipation. All that is the bad stuff dying off. Now, here's what's key, and one of my pet peeves in the fasting world is that people say, well, fasting's bad for your microbiome. And what I want to say is fasting changes your microbiome. And in that change, you're going to see a lot of die-off. You're going to see this relocation of the microbes. You're going to see this whole shift happen in the gut. And now what you need to be able to do is feed these microbes the right foods. So make sure you're doing enough polyphenol, probiotic, prebiotic foods so that you can sustain that new environment that you've given your body through fasting. So that there's two sides to the microbe question when it comes to fasting. It's what's happening when you're fasting and what are you reintroducing to keep those microbes thriving.
You mentioned there the bad bacteria dying off during a fast, which is great for us, but I'm curious why it's not more of like an antibiotic impact when we're not putting food in there for the bacteria. Like, why do the good guys survive and not the bad?
Well, I think what it does is, the way I look at it is the good guys change the internal environment. So what ends up happening is you're going to change the pH in the gut, and depending on which part of the gut you're talking about, when I say gut, it's stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. They all have different impacts when we're looking at fasting. But you're going to change the pH. You're going to change the microbes location. So that's going to start to happen. And that's going to be very unfavorable for these bad bacteria. They thrive in conditions that are maladaptive, that are not good. That's where they're going to thrive. So now you've changed the internal environment, so they die off. The good bacteria, you may lose. I've had a lot of discussion with experts about, do you kill any of the good bacteria when you're fasting? And my guess is you probably lose some good bacteria too. I can't find the research showing that they are saying that it's harmful to the good bacteria. But I like to really remind people that you've changed the environment to allow the good bacteria to thrive. So it's the environmental shift that is causing the bad to go and the good to thrive. And in that actual shifting, you may lose a few good, but the environment's there for them to regrow again.
And when it comes to fasting and shifting that environment for the good guys and also the unclumping, how long does that take?
That's a $1 million question. I would say if we look at research, it really is that 24-hour. It's getting to that 24-hour. And I can tell you from clinical experience, I've worked with a lot of patients who have had SIBO. But SIBO to me is the hardest thing to help somebody with. And SIBO, when I put a patient with SIBO into these 24-hour fasts, we get a better shift in their SIBO symptoms than any supplement I could ever give them. So it depends on what you're trying to go after. One of my big concerns, and Stephen Gundry and I have talked about this numerous times, he really looks at leaky gut as what causes the energy slump that so many people get. And when I look at leaky gut, especially in women, I think of chronic years of birth control use. I think of multiple rounds of antibiotics. I think of foods, lathered in glyphosate. All of that is causing this leaky gut situation. And I think some of the shorter fasts, just a woman building a fasting lifestyle over time, will heal a leaky gut. But when we need to heal something like SIBO, we definitely need to go into the longer fasts, like 24 hours.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
So if you want to lose weight, I really feel like the first thing we've got to look at is when you eat, not what you eat. Coffee may really help one person elongate their fast, and it may actually break the fast for another.